2016. My name is David Weddington, the PA HMIS administrator for the HMIS lead agency for the collaborative applicant COCs PA 509, PA 601, and several other providers throughout the state of Pennsylvania, as well as the Emergency Solutions Grant funded through DCED. Today we're going to talk about the recent updates that will be occurring and have occurred to the training site from ClientTrack version 13 to ClientTrack version 15 software. What we're first going to do is kind of go into the navigation manual, and you'll notice, and I'm just going to minimize my screen for a second. And share. You'll notice at the top of your screen you'll have documents that are being shared. One is the PA HMIS navigation and menu reference. The other one is the PA HMIS programs workgroup reference that we've gone ahead and updated to the new look of ClientTrack 15. So as we go through here, we'll touch on the navigation of ClientTrack 15 and how some of the things might have changed in terms of appearance. The overall workflow that you're used to in terms of data entry has not changed. It's just more of the aesthetics of how buttons work in the system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop right into the system. And you'll notice right off the bat, I'm going into the training site. So the training site has already been updated, and we've gone through and tested it and found out that everything is working properly. And we'll be doing the same thing on November 14th in the evening hours from 4 o'clock on. And then by the next morning, you'll be ready to log in to do your normal, data entry workflow and so on and so forth. So as you see right off the bat, the color scheme kind of has changed a little bit already. Log in just like you normally would, and let's make sure I enter the correct password. There we go. You'll notice now it's a drop-down menu that you'll select before you scroll through each one of the work group organization and location. You'll want to select the appropriate work group that you'll be doing the data entry for. Right now, for overall purposes, I'll just be going into the PA HMIS work group for case managers. I'm going to use my HMIS service agency with a lot of the test clients that we'll be using today. And then location, the location is there, and it's not required to actually enter. So you can play around. You can leave that or whatever setting you're at right now. Some people get used to, wanting to set it to certain locations. But once you set that, you'll click Use these settings. And remember, folks, that if it doesn't come up, the system doesn't come up in a new window right away, you might get that alert at the top of the screen that says, please enable or click this option to open up a new browser. But since it opened up right away for me, I'm going to go ahead and expand the window completely. And as you see, the look of it has kind of changed already, right off the bat. And you'll first notice that before in the older version that there were tabs up here. Well, ClientTrack has done away with the actual physical tabs at the top and have gone more in a modern approach and used I don't know, in other systems, folks are using like a carousel approach. So normally, you'll automatically load to the client tab. or the tab that you are automatically in. But to navigate back and forth, you'll use this option right here, this section right here, to switch your active workspace. They're calling them workspaces now. So you'll go ahead and click that, and you'll notice that it's going to appear in a carousel-like format. Today we're going to go through the Home tab and the Client tab, and then we'll further go into the Housing. We'll do a separate training for the Housing tab later on. But I'm going to switch over to the Home tab for a second. And you'll notice that there's nothing on this side except for these icons. And what they've done is they've given you the option to pin and unpin the side menu. So anytime that you were to select an item, it actually will go away and you'll get a full screen. But to open up that, you'll use this Show Menu option. If you want to elect to keep this open like this, you can go ahead and click the Always Show the Menu or the Pin option. And it will actually stay there for you as you click on other options. Just giving you an example, I'm going to quickly unpin and hide the menu and click on System Documents, and you'll notice it goes away. And those system documents, which fall under the PA HMIS accounts on the Home tab, that's where you'll find all our updated documents that you can organize and kind of go through any of the agreements that are currently in the system, any of our reference guides, our training materials, which we will be going through and making sure that they're updated to the new look. The intake/data element templates, and just your general system information, meaning the HMIS data standards manual and dictionary. I just want to throw out that we will be pausing from time to time to take any questions, and Brian will be manning the chat box or the Q&A features within WebEx. So once we get through this general purpose and for the overall navigation menu, we'll take some quick questions if anybody has questions for that, and then move on to the general data entry to show that. But just wanted to show, after the system documents, I'm going to go ahead and open the menu and just kind of show you that again with the pin feature. And you'll notice that I can say User Dashboard to get me back to my original dashboard, and now you notice the menu stays there. We will be going through at the closer to the end. We're going to go through the case manager reports and the client management tools, just to kind of show you some of the reports that are still there and available, and some of the client management tools that we've built into the system. And again, in this navigation menu, you'll notice that it kind of walks you through that entire process of some of the changes that occurred in the system. One cool new feature that has been implemented or put into the system is what this favorites option or favorites menu. What it allows you to do is, if you're consistently using a certain section or option or menu, you can go ahead and mark that as a favorite. What I'm actually going to do is just kind of quickly show you that. I'm going to use one of the client management tools that we have in the system. And to help manage the clients, your clients in the system, instead of having to always go in and find and add new clients, and pulling off in the system, there's the active enrollments that you can use to pull in and select by the program. And it'll show all your active enrollments within that program at that time. Probably better if I use one that's there. Now, The reason why I'm showing you this is because I can actually go ahead and click this as a favorite. And as you see, I already have the cases as one of my favorites. But I can say new container, and you can make a subfolder to that. So and go ahead and click Save, and you'll notice that now, regardless of where you're at, you have a favorite section right here in the top left-hand corner. And you can go directly to either your active enrollments or your active cases, or you can even do this with, depending on what workspace you're in, you can even do it with, if you're always looking to find out a client, that's obviously already up there, but if you're enrollments a lot, you can go and add that there as well. Brian, do we have any questions at this time?
No, not yet.
No, not yet? Okay. So as I said, this kind of goes through and shows you the new updates and the workflows and how they go about. To show you some of how the workflow menu goes, you'll see that within the actually entering a client. So while there's no questions, I'll go ahead and continue on, and we'll move on to the Client tab. Again, you want to go ahead and click that double arrow and to open up your workspace or your carousel area. Go ahead and click on the Client Carousel, and as you see, it'll switch over to that carousel up for the Client tab originally. You'll notice, and this is something that scares a lot of people all the time, and we get a lot of help desk requests with this, or while we're helping with the help desk, people will say, well, the last client that I was entering is still there. Well, it's always going to refresh back to that last client. And it allows you to kind of update that information from that last client. But if you want to and make sure that add a new client or open up a new client record, you always want to remember to go to the Find Add Client in the top left-hand corner of the screen with the magnifying glass. You go ahead and click that, and basically it will search for a new client. So what I'm going to do is I'll search for a random client. And I'll go ahead and search. Now, before I search, remember, when you're adding a new client, you want to get as much information as possible added in here, from the first name, last name, Social Security number, date of birth, to do verification check. Now, for some reason, if you put all the information in there, and yet they're not coming up, most likely they're not in the system. But just in case, I like to just use the first and last name and maybe a middle initial if possible, and do the search for that, just in case the one number is off and the Social Security number or the date of birth is off, and that's actually the same person. So this client in the training environment obviously is a new client. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this new client in the system. You'll notice now that that workflow option that used to be in the top left-hand corner of your screen is more visible now in terms of being able to see where you are at in the process of creating a client. So I'm going to go through here and create a couple of the, and depending on your program, remember you want to fill in the information that is required. And however, everybody remembers that based off of the updates that occurred in the October 1st release, remember there's been some changes, some of the elements, some of the pickless options that you want to be mindful of. And remember, because we're creating a client, and I'm creating a single individual right now, when you create the single individual, the household is already set. The family information, the relationship to that household is already set to self. So you want to remember, do not change this, because we get that a lot as well in the help desk in terms of people changing this, and then they have an issue when they're trying to attach other case members to that client or that client to another household. It's not coming up. There's no head of household identified, so on and so forth. So remember, this already pre-populates, and you want to make sure you leave that as self for that client. So we'll go ahead and click Next. Remember, if it was a previous client, you can copy any household information. If not, you want to put in their previous address or their current address. I'm going to leave it blank for now. And click Finish. So remember, you'll always get this possible duplicates in the system if it's somewhat close to the information that you entered in the client profile. You want to just verify that that the clients that are coming up is not actually that person, or if it is, you want to click on that record and perform an import, and I'll show you that in a few. But if everything is still correct and this is a new client and it's not duplicated, go ahead and click Finish again, and it will move us on to the next step of the workflow process. And in this next step, we've kind of helped us create it's moved you to our PA HMIS navigation shortcut, which we recently created to kind of help navigate you through the process a little bit more. So the very next step, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start a new enrollment for this client. At this point, it would ask me if I wanted to add any additional household members. I'm not going to add any additional household members because I'll show you quickly how to run through a family at that time. So we'll say no. And then it'll take us right into some of the assessment questions. Remember, anything that's starred is a required question. It's going to first ask if it's a domestic violence survivor. If it was a yes, then it will generate additional questions now. When experience occurred, it'll ask you the following pickless options, and then is the person currently fleeing domestic violence situation? And that's a yes or no. For now, I'm just going to answer that no, and I'm going to click Save. Obviously, the next step in that process, after the domestic violence and establishing that, is the client consent for release of information, or ROI. The ROI is always going to, start date is going to preset to whatever the initial enrollment date is, but you want to make sure, in the system it's going to preset, but you want to make sure that the ROI is either on the enrollment, and that it doesn't come after the enrollment date, or any of that information that you enter prior. Let's say the RI was signed on November 12th. Any information that you entered on today, the 9th, is not going to be shared because it doesn't fall within the sharing privileges or the agreement, the data sharing agreement. So it should coincide with the signature assigned on the ROI, and you want to try to get that best either before the enrollment or on the enrollment date. And remember, it's going to automatically preset the full data sharing, but they have the option to partially share their data, and then you'll uncheck what's not allowed to be shared. Or you can select no data sharing, and if they've elected to not do that, and nothing will be shared. For this purpose, I will say we will share the data for now, and if the agreement has been signed, you want to go ahead and click Agreement Signed, and then you also have the option to upload that document into the system to where you can store it, and then it will show you the icon of what that is. I'm actually going to delete that for now, and then click Save and move on to the next step, which is the start of the program enrollment. And you'll notice that for some reason, if something came up and you want to make a change, you have the option at any time to go backwards in the workflow and update that information. And if there was no change, then you could say no change. If there was a change, you want to make sure that you say save and save that change. And then if there's no change, I'll click no change. It'll bring you back to the very last spot that you were at, which was right before the program enrollment. For the program enrollment, you want to make sure that you select the project that it's associated to. And then you want to come down here and put in the enrollment date. If you click on that box, it'll automatically set it to your current date. If that's incorrect and there's another date, you want to actually enter that date of when the actual enrollment occurred. Go ahead and click Save. So if you do get an error that occurs, you want to hover over the red exclamation point, and then right here it says the program is currently at or above 4. However, the program will still allow for more enrollment. So that's an alerter that was set up in terms of how many, you can set alerters in terms of how many people can be enrolled into a program. Like if there's a cap in your program, it will, depending on where you set it, you can actually make it strictly enforced or so on and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save so that I can move on to the next step. And then it brings you to that project master assessment. And the assessment date, again, should be, should coincide with the enrollment date and so on and so forth, or the updated date or so on and so forth. Then you go to the actual assessment, the universal data assessments. So you'll want to answer the housing status. The client location is already preset to whatever your program's currently under. And the service location. Remember, anything that started is a required field. You want to enter the living situation, so we'll say emergency shelter. And then length of stay prior to living situation is one of these options. For right now, I'll say 1 month or more, or less than 90 days. Approximate date of homelessness started. Remember, this is the date, not necessarily the date that they walked into the emergency shelter, but the actual date that they, stated that they became homeless. So for this, I'll just say 09/02/2016. And then regardless of where they stayed last night, how many times, number of times the client has been on the streets, emergency shelter, or safe haven in the past 3 years. And the total number of months has now been changed to that. Instead of a text field, it's a pick list options. And then the covered health insurance, I remember before it was spread across the entire. Now it's kind of more narrowed down and a better kind of feel. So we'll say yes. And if they do have health insurance, you want to be sure to answer what kind of health insurance they have. And click Save, move on to the next assessment, which is the excuse me, Barriers and Special Needs Assessment. Again, the assessment date is up there and pre-populates the enrollment date, and then you want to select what it is that their disability is. There's the domestic violence question that's specific to this enrollment. Or I can hit default from last assessment. It'll bring over that information from when we created, before we created the client profile. So we'll go ahead and click Save, move on to the financial assessment. And now I'll say no, but if it was yes, remember there's additional options that come up. I'll say no for that for now, and I'll say yes to the non-cash. I'll just go ahead and put in an amount for the food stamps. Go ahead and click Save, and move on. And then there's the employment section. Remember now, there's, depending on your program, there's certain requirements and certain questions that need to be answered. At the time, if you don't have that information, you can always skip the assessment to come back. It's not recommended, but there is that option for this assessment. For right now, what I'll go ahead and do is I'll just say no, unable to work, and then I'll click Save. And then for right now, I'll show you the skip assessment for the adult education. But again, I'll just show you, for example, if you enter, high school diploma, it'll ask for any secondary education that will need to be selected. But for right now, I'll go ahead and use the skip assessment tool so that moves it on. If your housing or your provider, your housing tab and your inventory is set up in the system, it'll ask you to, if you want to perform a client check-in. Again, we're going to do a separate training on that because that's a little bit more. There's a little bit more detail to get a little bit more time for that. So go ahead. I'll go ahead and say yes and check the client in, and then it'll just ask me which facility that they're going into. For right now, I'll put it in there, and then I'll say continue. And I appreciate some of the information. And because there's no more rooms available, I'm actually going to skip this check-in for now so that we can go into that process in further detail as we're working on those manuals now. So if you said yes, you'd go through and check in the client. If you said no, you don't want to check in the client, it'll then take you to you're done. You go ahead and click Finish and make sure you click Finish. If you do not click Finish and you try to move into Find Add a Client or something else, other options, and the Finish is not selected, the information is not saved. Therefore, all the information you just entered basically gets erased. All right. Brian, before I move into household, entering a household, are there any questions?
Yes, there's one good question. I answered it through the chat, but it's a pretty good question. Someone asked, will there be any new questions added to the updated system going out Monday? And just to answer that, no, there's not. like we're not doing any new data elements or any changes. This is mostly just a, transition from ClientTrack's version 13 to ClientTrack version 15. Almost all the changes are related to, as David said in the beginning, visual aesthetics, the new menus and navigation, all the same data elements that exist in the system now will exist in the system on Monday. And I think that's it.
All right, thanks, Brian.
Sure.
All right. Actually, before I go into the household, enrolling in the household, I'll quickly just want to go into this navigation or take me to option, just to kind of again show you that you can, after any client and you need to update information or so on and so forth, you can actually go in and view an assessment, the assessments that are in the system for the client, or view enrollments or start a new enrollment. But you can also, now mind you, this Find That Client is up here, but you can also use the navigation tool and you can actually perform a new client search. I'll go ahead and use that tool.
I can't find you the system. You said it's under Irma? Yeah, Irma Kelly. K-E-L-L-Y.
We're getting a lot of feedback. I know all the lines are muted, but someone got through. If you could mute your phone, it would be greatly appreciated. And we'll go ahead and see who that is and try to mute them.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. All right, thanks, Brian. So creating a household. Let's go ahead and we'll say, oops. We'll first make sure that the name is, first and last name are not on the same line. All right, we'll go ahead and click search, see what's going on here. Just to show you quick information, you know what, let's do something else. All right, I'm going to use my Johnny Manziel client or household. You want to make sure that if your organization owns the client, it'll say yes. If the organization says no, then you want to be sure to go through that import. And actually, let's see if we can show you that exactly. All right. You click on the client, and what you can do here is you want to go up to, excuse me, this new client identification section. And what it'll ask you, before, remember, it was kind of hidden. You'd have to go to the edit client profile and perform it there. Now that we have this new client identification section, you can go there, click on the blue action button, and click on Review Import Global Client. Ensuring that that information was shared. You've got the release of information. You want to perform the import. Import the client, finish, and then you can go about your process in terms of enrolling this client into the system. You can either go from project enrollments, and then as you notice, now there would always be those it would expand down below. Now it's hover over, and then it'll ask you what you want to go to, anywhere where you see an arrow. And remember, it's kind of tricky at first. Sometimes people will come off it too quickly. You want to kind of just move over. You can move up, move over, and you'll get used to it over time. I know that's one of the things I had to get used to for a little bit, but I think I got the hang of it now. So, and then you would do you create a new project enrollment and go from there. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and search and see if there's a Johnny P. Smith, and I'm going to actually create a new household. I'm going to kind of quickly go through this so that we can kind of go through the reporting and the client management tools more in detail. So as I'm creating a new household, again, it opens up that workflow. You want to go through the head of household information. You want to put in the information that applies. Again, it already sets the head of household to self. You want to make sure you create the head of household first so that it does this. And go ahead and click Next. Again, with the address information, go ahead and click Finish. And then at this point, once you verify that it's not the same person, because that's a John E, that's a John P, I'm working on a John P. So I'll go ahead and click Finish. And then this is where it asks new household members. Would you like to enter new household members? Yes, I'm going to say yes. There's the standard method of entering. I prefer to enter the information through the quick method, quick entry method. It's a little bit easier in terms of going through and clicking on the next line and saying adding that person's information. Oops. Once you click off of that, obviously the search options come up. It'll see if there's any other persons that come up in that come up with that information. If not, go ahead and exit out. Enter the information that applies. Select the head of household relationship, and then you can also go on to the next line and add the children. So, oops. All right. And then you can continue going for as many children or dependents that are in the household, or you can keep going and adding all the dependents that are within that household that are being served within that program at the time. All right. So once the information is completed, you can go ahead and click Save, and then go ahead and create that household and those household members under that case. Again, it's thinking there's possible duplicates. You just want to go through and make sure that none of these clients are who they say they are, and verify that, and click Save. If they're actual new clients, and then click Save and Close. And then once you do Save and Close and they're added, the household's been created, then it'll take you to your quick navigation menu, or if you're used to it, you can come over here to your project enrollments, click Project Enrollments, click Add New Project Enrollment, and then since we've already edited the household members and created the household, we'll go ahead and say no, continue with this enrollment. And then as you're going through, you're going to update that information, update the information that applies, create the client consent for release of information, making sure to check off the that the agreement was signed. And working with households, you want to make sure that the release of information should be signed by any adult over the age of 18 years of age or older needs to have their own release of information. Now, any children that fall under a household, that release of information is covered. The release of information for the head of household, it covers the children at that point. Let's go ahead and select the Rapid Rehousing project. Again, once you select the project, SSFCF programs ask a little bit more information. It'll ask for a specific county that they were served in. Where are we at? Right now, just use Philadelphia County. And then you can go ahead and select the actual enrollment or when they were enrolled in. You could use the calendar to pre-populate that as well. And then the relationship with the head of household is already set. Go ahead and click Save. And then what it's going to do after this is it's going to go through each one of the household members. You'll notice on the side here that it will first do the head of household, then it'll do the dependents for each section, as you notice. And then once you get to the end and you have completed all the assessments for each one of the clients, you will then, it'll ask you to finish. If you need to check them into a facility, it'll ask you to do that. If not, it'll say no, and then it'll say finish, and it'll bring you back to the navigation, take me to tool, and go from there. All right. Are there? And then I guess the next thing what I'll do is go through a quick an exit, just to kind of give you a feel for how that workflow goes and so on and so forth. Now, at any time, you can pause the workflow and come back to it. If I were to pause this workflow, what it'll do is, it'll bring me back to the client's dashboard. But if you go back to your workspace and you go to your Home tab, the next time you log in, you should go to your user dashboard, and depending on how it's set up, you can actually go down and unpause workflows or go back into workflows and resume them down here. So if I select resume the enrollment for Johnny P. Smith, it'll bring me right back to the client tab, right back to where I was, and then I'll be able to enter that information. Cool little feature. I don't know how many people knew about that, but it's something like if you're, entering a client and an emergency comes up and you have to put something on pause, you can actually pause this and come back to it later. All right. Let's go to where is that? I'm actually going to pause this again so I can get out of it, and I'm going to go back to Johnny Manziel. And I got to remember not to do that. There we go. Just to show you an exit, so I'm going to use, let's use, I'll just use an emergency shelter exit. You can exit a client directly from the dashboard by selecting the blue action buttons and going in to certain information. We'll use this one. You know what, that's a mass shelter, so let's go ahead and use the SSVF because there's not too many mass shelters. All right, so again, the blue action button, or you can go over to Project Enrollments and go in that way. Since a lot of people seem to, working in the help desk, seem to like to function through the dashboard, I'll go ahead and use that. So and you can not only exit enrollment, you can perform, annual assessments or updates, view case members, add household members to this enrollment, so on and so forth. So I'll go ahead and quickly exit a client. It'll bring up the programs, 2014 HMIS programs exit workflow. You'll put in the date in which there was an exit. I'll just use today's date as an example. We'll say rental by client, no housing subsidy. And then if some folks are using reason for leaving, you can enter that. It's not a required field, but I'll go ahead and put that in there, and I'll say completed program. Just real quick, the next thing is if you are working with, if you're a case manager, you're working with a client, and you successfully put them into housing, but you still have to provide them case management while they're in that housing, you want to make sure that this box is not checked. But if case management has ended since you found them housing, then you want to go ahead and check off this box so that they are then, closed out of your and not under your case assignments anymore, or your active case assignments anymore. You go ahead and click Save, and it'll take you through those assessments. You want to just verify the assessment date. I believe I used today, so we'll go ahead and do that. We can go ahead and see if there was a last insurance assessment update. We'll go ahead and update that, and we'll say, yeah, he exited with that. We'll say yes. Select the type of insurance, click Save. And then for this purpose, just to kind of speed things up a little bit, I'll go ahead and keep this as a no, and we'll say Save. Default assessments, no, but we'll say we worked on his income, and now he's getting SSI. We'll say 1,000. And then we'll go ahead and click Save. And then I'm just going, for this purposes, we'll go ahead and say Skip Assessment, and then finish the workflow. And then what I'm going to do now is, since we've gone through the overall, new look and navigation menus. We've gone over the enrollment of a single individual, enrollment of a family, enrollment of an exiting a client from an enrollment. We'll go ahead and take a look at some of the client management tools and then go into reporting. So again, I'll go into the workspace, click on the Home tab or Home Workgroup. All right. So now, obviously, I set those as my favorites, but under Client Management, as a case manager, under the Case Manager Workgroup, you have certain features such as Client Delete if you make a mistake. Client Merge is done at the agency manager level, so if you find that there is indeed a duplicate record, you can reach out to whoever your agency manager is in your program and get them to run a duplicate report, and then they'll be able to merge those records. And remember, when merging a record, you want to always merge into the newest record. Correct, Brian? I believe so. Anyway, so then you have your active enrollments. that you can go into, select the program, and it'll show you the active enrollments that are currently in the system. And you can go directly into the client, and by selecting the little person with the green arrow instead of, I believe before it was the white person or blue person with the white arrow or with a white cross. So, and it'll take you right to that client. Let's go ahead and go back, and then the same thing for the active enrollments cases, where it's just going to list it by cases or households, families, and then you have the option to go directly into the head of household, or you can go and view the case members that fall within that household. All right, next one. There are cool little tools for rapid rehousing programs and the homeless status documentation and the veterans list by agency. There's additional guidance that will be coming out for that, and actually is already out there. So you can find that under the system documents under the PA HMIS accounts. The case manager reports. Well, first, Brian, is there any questions related to the client management tool or the entries, the exits? Any other additional questions?
Well, there's some questions about some, there's a sharing question, and then there's a document upload question. So I'm wondering if we might be able to share that. Because one person is asking, is there anywhere in the system to be able to upload documents for individual clients?
Okay, so
do you mind showing that real quick?
Yeah, I can show that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into the client tab, and I'll just use this client that I uploaded originally. Actually, it looks like there's a spouse, so let's see if we can locate the head of household. And actually, I probably should make you aware, because it actually looks a little bit easier to manage when you look at all the household members. If you're under a client like this and we notice that the relationship is a spouse, but we want to make sure we make updates through and add a lot of the documentation of the household, you can click on the family icon, and then it'll list, the name of the client in the household, their age, and then their relationship. So, and then you'll notice that you can add case notes or services and calendars to them. So I'm just going to load the head of household real fast for this guy. And then under the client profile, or edit client profile, you'll notice there's something here called document storage. And the document storage will allow you to add new documents to the client's record, whatever it may be. Now, mind you, the documentation of homelessness, if you're an EHG program, the documentation of homelessness has its own section, and you can find those in those guides, as well as the ESG invoicing process has its own document. But when it's specific to, let's say you wanted to just load the client's, ID or some important paperwork related to housing, you would go ahead and go to the document storage, add a new document. You want to put in the document type. We'll say client ID photo. Or, yeah. You'll put in the association date, maybe the expiration date of when you want it to expire, and then you upload the actual document. It's something usually stored on your local drive, whether it's scanned in there or something or emailed to you and you saved it to your local drive, you want to go ahead and locate it, open it. It'll save, you know, the name it's located on your local drive, and then click Save. And now, and depending on how large the item is, so you can upload a single document, or you can zip up several documents. And it's probably the more preferable way of doing it if you have like a lease or something, or a rental agreement that has several pages, or there might be, you want to attach the lease agreement, the rental agreement, and you know, some other form of payment, and there are 3 different files. Or you can go ahead and click Add New Document. You can say housing paperwork. And you can, once you go to your local drive, you can, what I normally do is, we'll do it now. So what I'm actually going to do first is I'm going to cancel that, and I'm going to go into this, and it should be sharing this monitor, so you should be able to see this. You can go ahead and select, let's go here, select all of them, send to compress file. It'll create a zip file. You should say test documents. And then what we can do is choose that file now and choose that test document. And this will help with keeping down the storage size, kind of maintaining things. You know, you notice anything with an upload, it'll actually just be a blank paper, but it'll say zip, and we can actually save that. And depending on how large or how many files are in that zip file, it depends on how long it'll take to load. And then, Brian, what was the other question? Hopefully I answered that question, and that was pretty helpful. There is a question related to the release.
Yeah, there's a question. Someone had a question about the client consent form, and I think it would be useful to show them, like, say they needed to enter in a new consent form, or they made a mistake on the original one. Could we show, walking through the process of finding the current consent form and also creating a new one if they need it?
Yes. Cool. Okay. All right, so I'm using this same client. I'm actually going to go back to the client dashboard. And under Edit Client Profile again, you want to go ahead and hover over and come up here to Client Consent for Release of Information. And then, and this is if you need to correct a client consent form or update it. You want to go to your client consent history.
No, that's just the history.
What's that?
No, go ahead.
Okay. And then you'll notice that it'll show the agreements that are in place currently. So we can actually view this agreement, and we'll see that this is an active agreement, and the information is being fully shared. Now,
that's it. Click that. Yep.
There we go. I was like, wait, some of those look right for a second. So that's the history. That history will show you all of the consents that are in there. The client consent for release of information will allow you to pull open that current consent that's in there and the date that it was created. And if for some reason the information needs to be updated, you should be able to, if they said that, no, I don't want to have certain information shared, you can uncheck it, those certain elements, or certain services that they wanted, and you can go ahead and save that updated information. And if for some reason it was extended out and the date changed, you'll want to update the expiration date. But remember, it's good for 7 years. So we hit save.
Yeah.
We can do that.
And if you go up, say someone enters in something incorrectly, like we have the start date and the sharing level date blocked out because they're used to set sharing methods for the client, so we don't like that change during. So if that's incorrect or the client needs to change it, we've got a Create New Agreement button up on the top right. So you can click that button and it'll basically give you a blank form for you to re-enter a new sharing agreement. And once you enter this and save it, that one will then take precedence for that client.
Yep. Thank you. All right.
I think that's it for questions.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're good.
That's it for all the questions. Are there any other questions, or do we want to open up? Does anybody have any questions where we can open up, or maybe attempt to unmute somebody and they can ask a live question?
Yeah, let me check real quick. All right. I think someone just asked, what if you made a mistake and need to change the start date? If you're talking about the client consent form, I think we just showed it. If someone's talking about the enrollment date, because I know people accidentally or don't realize that when you enroll a client, it automatically defaults to the current day. Do you mind showing them that edit function to change the enrollment date?
Yep. So, again, you can either start directly from the client dashboard. For this purpose, I'll go ahead and use the project enrollments over on the left-hand side of that menu. I'll click project enrollment. Let's say, for example, I made a mistake and I didn't mean to do 9-9, I meant to do 9-1-2016. So using the blue action button, you can come down here, go to Edit Enrollment, let it load, and then because this is a household, you can go ahead and make sure you update the dates accordingly, either with a calendar or a manual entry. And then just to confirm, you can save, confirm and save, and now that information has been updated. Now, the assessment date that was created for that entry, that will need to be updated as well. And you can go in by going to Project Enrollments, clicking on Assessments, and then you'll notice that blue action button, and then the Edit Master Assessment. You can come in here and change the date to that as well. And then just for verification purposes, well, this is mass shelter, but you can go into the actual assessment just to kind of go in and verify that that information is correct, and you'll notice that the assessment date has been updated as well. All right. And the same thing applies for excuse me, let's get out of the assessments, but same thing applies for if you exited the client and the exit date was wrong. You can actually go to the Edit Exit and update that exit date as well. All right. All right. So just to kind of do like a quick overview, none of the reports has really changed, but I do want to highlight, since we have 100 attendees on the call, this is probably a good time because we are finalizing the data for the annual homeless assessment reports for PA 509 and PA 601 continuums of care. And any programs that fall within that geographical region, that's emergency shelter, transitional housing, and permanent supportive housing programs, that your data is being reported in there. To go in and verify and make sure your information is clean as possible, and I'll be sending out an email reminder to folks for specific areas for maybe missing data. You want to make sure you go into your case manager reports, and then under the HUD HMIS reports is where you're going to find, and as you see it, hover over, slide over, and then you'll have your APRs, your AHAR, your ESG CAPER, your ECART, your SSVF reports, your point in time, so on and so forth. Just to make everybody aware that, you know, this is the APR that is being used right now to submit your current APRs. In the future, it might be something different that we're hearing, but for right now, that is the current APR that needs to be used. And similar to what I'm going to show you, need to show you in the APR, anything that looks like it's a link or it's either underlined or bold in a different color, that's usually a report within a report that shows you the detailed specs for that question. I'll show you that through the AHAR report. So under the AHAR report, by program type, you'll want to make sure your dates are from, now again, it'll still be in the email, 10/1/2015 to 9/30/2016. You'll want to select your program that you're associated to. Let's see. And it'll be already preset in there, and then you'll want to select the program type that was reported on the housing inventory count. And then whatever project that is, project type your program is. You'll want to run one with vets and then one with only vets. And then you want to select the program. You click report, and it'll run you your annual homeless assessment report for that project. This could take a little bit of time. Sometimes it shouldn't take no more than 30 seconds. It all depends on how much data you have. Since you're running it for your single program, it shouldn't take long at all. But when I'm running it or Brian's running the report, we run it for all of the shelters or all the transitional housing programs within the geographical area for that COC. So it takes us a little bit of time. Hopefully it runs.
And just also to mention, this is the training site, so it's has a little less resources than the production site, so it might be a tad slower.
Correct. So this is the same report you'll see in the training from the production. It just looks, the numbers might not be as accurate and up to date. But to see exactly, what clients fall under that. So, for example, under missing information for age, I have 9 people. So I can click on that missing information. It's similar to the APR and several other reports. There's a report within a report that will generate those names that come up in the system as missing information. And if you want to take the time to kind of go through the production site and run this report for your programs for the AR, it would be greatly appreciated so that we can finalize the data and have information as clean as possible. And just remember, when you're going through any reports, there's these buttons up here that will go to the next page, forward and backwards, and so on and so forth. While I'm on this, I might as well go ahead and run the APR since we've had a lot of questions come in about that, just to kind of show you an example of that. So let's just do 15. do 1031. I'll go ahead and do the permanent supportive housing project. And we'll do permanent supportive housing as the project type for the performance measures. And again, depending on how much data is actually in the system, it depends on how long the report will run. The first page you'll see is the overall page, a kind of outline, the reporting area, the organization, and the program. And you'll want to go on to the next couple pages. And these are the little links that I was talking about. You can actually click on, and it'll pull up the report within a report. And you can navigate from page to page, and it'll show you exactly what's going on. And see where you need to clean up the data. If for some reason there's, your program does not serve unaccompanied children, and unaccompanied children are coming up, go ahead and shoot an email to the help desk or myself, and we can go ahead and we have a cool little tool on our end. Instead of you having to kind of recreate things, so we can update that information for you and get that sorted through. That's just something that we want to that happened in the conversion. I think we've pretty much tackled them all, but if you're running the APR and notice that, just go ahead and shoot us a quick email, and we'll get you sorted out. And then the same thing, for several of the other reports, you have your case manager reports where you can look at your specific caseloads by individual clients, by the house, by families or households. You have client lists, client alerts, and client goal reports that you can use. And then your client program reporting, which is slew from your enrollment reports, where you can see usage, you can see client recidivism, client served by location, your demographic reports, your data quality reports, income reports, and service reports. Does anybody have any questions at this point in terms of reporting?
Yeah, we only have one question, but it's related to data templates. Someone asked, I don't know if you have the chance to re-show that system documents again, but someone's asking for forms of what to collect at entry and exit for certain programs.
Okay.
And that's
since I'm on the home workspace, I'm going to go right up here to PA HMIS accounts and go to system documents. And then you can scroll through the entire list, or you can use your document category, agreements and forms. And
show them the templates. Oh, sorry.
Yes. There we go. And here are your specific templates that have been developed and can be used. Anything from the ESG Caper invoice templates to your HMIS intake template and exit template. And you can click on the document download button and download it directly as a Word document to pull up. And it pulled up on the other screen. So, And if there are any suggestions in terms of maybe how we are storing the documents, or how things maybe could be better accessible or organized, we're more than willing to take any suggestions on that, as well as we're trying to work on something to get that PA HMIS website back up. I know it's doesn't tell you a lot of information on the DCED website, but if it's a matter of updating it on a specific COC page or something like that, we're working on things like that, or any suggestions to get the information out to you guys as users more efficiently, feel free to let us know. And then we will be coming out with a training schedule in terms of some of the required trainings that that we should be doing on a yearly basis in terms of privacy and security, and any of the updates and some of the new the workflows, work groups that are currently shown on the older version to the newer. So we'll be working on those. So, any other questions before we conclude? All right. Well, if there's no other questions, we'll hang on the line for a couple of minutes to see if any questions come back in. But thank you again for attending today's training. Again, the system for the production site will be updated beginning the morning of Monday, November 14th. It will be available and fully ready for you to use on that date. So be prepared and be ready and don't be shocked when it updates. All right? And feel free to reach out to us in the help desk if you have any further questions at either the 717-214-5326 or the help desk email address. All right? And feel free to use the link in that previous email to go into the training site to familiarize